Hello everyone, this is Aspect and welcome back to the second episode of Applied Energistics 2. This is going to be the second part of the tutorial I made, uploaded about a week ago, and we're going to be going over some new stuff in this episode, including what an ME system is, what the uses for that system are, and all the ways that you can customize and use the system for whatever you need it to do. So without further ado, let's hop right into it. So, an ME system, what even is it? Well, it's supposedly supposed to stand for a matter energy system, which is very useful, and it's a network that can interact with all sorts of things inside and outside of itself. And at the end of the day, it's just a collection of blocks that you can use um, to do certain things. And the main use for an ME system is large scale storage. So a lot of the times you're going to be using this just to store an extremely large amount of items in a small space, and this is a network, so it's a bunch of different blocks connected together with these cables. And so let's build a basic ME system just to store some stuff. Now, your items will be stored on what's called an ME drive, and this is essentially a flash drive for items. And to craft it, you're going to need a storage housing, and this is the template. And you'll need one of these to craft any type of storage drive. To craft it, you just need quartz glass, redstone dust, and iron ingots. And also, if you haven't seen the first episode of this series, I recommend you go watch that, because crafting recipes like the quartz glass, for example, are how to craft those is in the previous episode. So if you haven't seen that, some of this stuff is probably not going to make sense. Now, once you make the storage housing, you're going to need a component. And there's four types of components: the 1K, 4K, 16K, and 64K. The difference is just that it can store more items the higher you go. So we'll see later there are actual drives, obviously, and these are what actually you store your items on. And the 64K is the biggest in the base mod. There's also another mod that allows you to get bigger ones, but I'm not going to be going over that in this. So the first thing you're going to want is the 1K storage thing, and to get this you just need a logic processor, and to craft that, again, previous episode, some quartz and some redstone, and that's going to get you the basic 1K storage component. Now you're going to need to use these to craft up. You're going to need 3 of them to craft the 4K component. So you'll need 3 of those and a calculation one, some glass, and that'll get you the 4K component. And the next tier up, the 16K, you just need 4 of the 4 ones, or you need 3 of the 4K ones, which so 9 1K. And for the 64, you just need 3 of the 16s, so 27 total 1K components to make one of the 64s. However, to craft this into a drive, all you need is the housing in one of the components. So once you get a singular 64K, you can make a drive with it. So that's how you sort of tier up. So you're going to need a bunch of these for the highest tier, and in between, of course. And these are both crafted the same with just the component and the housing in a crafting grid. So that's how you make all of the ME drives. And I'll explain exactly what these do later, but for now, just craft however big you need, depending on what you're going to be using it for. So the actual ME drives, these things go inside of either an ME chest or an ME, well, this is also called an ME drive, but as you can see here, I've got each type of storage cell of each flash drive, if you will, in this ME drive, and you can see it renders in a little thing to show you that they're in there. And to make this thing, oh, looks like I haven't put the recipe out. It's this is the recipe here. You're going to need 2 of the engineering processors, 2 glass cables, and some iron. And that's how you're going to make one of these. Now, the difference between this one and the ME chest is the ME chest can only put 1 drive in it. So if I take this drive out, only 1 drive can go in. However, the ME chest also has a terminal on the top. So as you can see on this drive, I can't actually see what's inside of these. Even if there was items in it, there's no way of me checking what those items actually are, or even thinking about taking in, items in and putting them out. So to do that, just without a separate system, if you just had the chest, you could put 1 drive in it and it has a built-in terminal on the top. And if this had power, items would appear here. I could take in, put in, take out, all those kind of things. And to make the ME chest, it's a little bit different. You're going to need a terminal, an ME terminal, to craft it. So you're going to start by making a panel which is some glass, some glowstone, and then you'll need these 2 types of cores. And these are just crafting components, and these are used in a lot of later recipes as well, so take note of these ones. Got Certus quartz, Fluix dust, and a logic processor. For the other one, it's the same thing, logic processor, Fluix dust, but it's nether quartz. So the difference is just whether you use Certus quartz or nether quartz on these. And as you can see, Fluix, logic, same thing here. And when you combine those, you get 2 of those cores, another logic processor, and those panels, and you'll get a terminal. And you can use that terminal just like this to create the ME chest. Now you might be wondering again, how can I see my items? And if you're using an ME chest, you can click right on the top once it has power. But if you're using one of those and you want even more storage, you're gonna need an ME terminal. Now, this is the same recipe as here. You need these things to make the ME terminal, but there's also a crafting terminal. And this is just made by getting a calculation crafting table and combining it with that. And what this does, and I'll show this later, but you can actually craft within your terminal. With the normal terminal, all you can do is take items out and put items in, but with this one you can craft anything inside of there, and it makes things a lot easier for bulk item crafting to make a lot of things at once. Alright, so now that we have all the materials we need, we can actually make the most basic ME system in the entire world. And this is literally just an ME chest connected to some power. You can go ahead and power this thing up. As you can see, once it gets a little time, this thing lights up green, which means it's working, and I can click on this and boom, there's my terminal. I can get bedrock and plop it in there and take however much I want, and there's 6 bedrock in there. And obviously as I add things, these bytes and types get used up. Now I'll explain this here in a second, but this is the most basic ME system in the entire world. And the drive, storage and item types. So as I put items in, you'll see that these numbers go up. And the first number is called bytes. And bytes are essentially just how much storage is being used. And there is a calculation to know exactly how much bytes will be used by a certain number of item stacks. However, it's kind of complicated. So what I would recommend is just putting things until it gets full, and then just upgrading your drive if it gets full. However, you'll also see the types, and this makes a little more sense. So how this works is unique items are actually pretty easily shown in the creative inventory. As you can see, each one of these items here is a unique item. It's something different, right? They all have a separate ID, and they're different things. So if I get 9 unique items in my inventory and sauce them into this, you can see that they all take up a separate slot, and that even though only 74 of the bytes are used because there's only 1 of each one, 9 of the item types are used because the item types are separate. So if I have a lot of one specific item, let's say I have like 30,000 cobblestone, that could probably fit in a 1K drive. Now, I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but the reason being, it doesn't use any types. Even if it was 30,000 cobblestone, it would still only be one type. And so that's how that works. Next, we're going to going over terminals. So I'm going to go ahead and here's this too. The enchantments will use up an extra type. As you can see, that's 2 types used. So next thing, I'm going to put some diamonds and sticks in here, and I'm going to show you how the crafting terminal works. So if I go ahead, add some cables on, and put a crafting terminal right onto this, as you can see, here's my crafting terminal. Now I can take anything out of this ME chest and create whatever I want with it. So I can make diamond swords, I can make a bunch of them, put them in there. As you can see, it works just as anything else would in a crafting table, but you can use the items stored inside of the system and hit this X, and it'll put everything in the grid right back into your storage. So that's how that works. That's the crafting terminals. Alright, so the next thing I want to go over is this thing called channels. Now, I put basic here because channels can get a little confusing, and the reason for this is it's sort of an arbitrary number, and the number is on a system. So I've got this set up over here to explain this, and we have an ME chest, and this just has a storage on it. Now let me power this system up. Alright, so I've got 64 diamonds inside of this. Now, what I have back here is, in the previous episode, I showed you how to craft a smart cable, and I didn't explain what they did, I just said you could craft it, and I gave the recipe. And smart cables are interesting. So what they do is, each device on this system is using a channel. So one is being used by this chest, and the rest, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, are being used by these ME import buses. Now, these import buses are essentially ways that you can put items in and out of the system without using this terminal. So I could put diamonds in like this, but I could also automatically put diamonds in with an import bus. So I have these cables down here. I can put diamonds in here, and as you can see, the import bus I've placed below it will start filtering the items into the system, and the numbers going up in here, as you can see, that works just fine for any one of these. However, on the smart cable you'll see that there are a bunch of lines on here. So if you read, we have 3 white lines, 4 purple lines, and a black. And the white and purple represent used channels, so 7 of the channels are being used up, 6 chests and 1 ME chest. However, this one is blank, which means that there actually is an available channel, so I'm still able to add 1 more chest and import bus to this system, and it will still work properly. However, if I go over that limit, as you can see, all 8 are being used up. If I go over this limit and add 1 more import bus, the entire system will break, and that is because the channels are all used up. Every line on this little thing is being used, and you see that black line went away because I added another device. So, in a nutshell, basic channel stuff. It's not super basic even then, it's sort of hard, but all you really need to know is that channels can cause your whole thing to break if there's too many things attached. And there's a good way to get around this, and that is where the ME controller comes in. Of course, the things I just showed you, import and export buses. So, this is the ME controller right here. It's not powered, but how you're going to make it is 4 pure Furix crystals. You'll remember in the previous episode how you can grow those to be bigger. So you'll need the pure crystals, an engineering processor, and skystone blocks, which is just created, as I sort of put here, is by smelting skystone, which is from those meteors we went over in the previous episode. So if you smelt skystone, you get skystone blocks, and put those on the corners, pure Fluix, and you get the ME controller. What this is used for is essentially it is able to output 32 channels from every side of it. So I'll get to that in a minute, but if you look here, the default, as they call it an ad hoc system, and that essentially just means the default for a system without a controller is 8 channels. So if there's no controller, you can still use 8 channels up on this system. This one still works fine. However, once you get higher than that, you're going to need a controller. And so once you get one of these attached anywhere on your system, it'll create channels out from itself, and it doesn't use any channels. And I'll give an example in a minute. To craft this is the import bus, you're going to need one of those annihilation cores, sticky piston, an iron ingot. And for the export bus, you're going to need a piston, formation, and iron ingots. So the export bus is going to take things out of the system and put it into a chest. And the import is going to take things out of chests and put it into the system. And this also works for furnaces. You could create, actually I'll just give an example here. Let's say you've got a bunch of cables and you want, or you say you got a bunch of furnaces actually, and you want to automatically take things out and in. Well, you can do that. If you had this attached to a system, which obviously it's not attached and, not very useful to us now, but I could say, okay, I want exporting fuel like this. I want exporting my things I want to smelt, and on the bottom I want to be importing the finished products. So as you can see, it's exporting the things that are going into the furnace, so those would go into the top, the things I'm going to smelt, and the fuel would go in the back, and the output of the furnace, once it's done, would go into the system to be going back in my ME chest. That would just be a basic example but all you need to know is that how the import and export buses work, and that's how you craft them. And it works with any storage block, so it could even be a hopper, it could be, I think minecarts work, but I'm not too sure about that, you'd have to test it. But yes, as you can see at this sign, larger networks most likely need an ME controller, and dense cables, as shown how to craft in the previous episode, can have 4 channels per line. So you see these lines on this, each one of these represents one line with the smart cables. However, with the dense cables, each line on these, if it was powered and lit up, would represent 4. And so as you add a lot more things to these dense ones, it'll light up the lines a lot slower. So you can have a total of 32 channels on each one of these dense cables. And as I said before, this controller in the middle can output 32 channels from every side. Okay, so the main reason you'd want to use these dense cables on a larger network is, well, let's say you've got all of your storage systems on the top, and I could grab a bunch of these MB drive blocks, and each one of these would only count as one of the 32 channels. So if I made a bunch of them on here, like all 32, and all of these are filled with drives, I could fill this entire top area, and these are only 8 of them, so I could fill 32 drives up there, and they would all work fine, as long as you've got this controller and these dense cables used up on there. Alright, so the next thing I want to go over is this wireless terminal. And this is really useful because you can use a wireless terminal to connect to your ME system anywhere you want. So I've already got this set up over here. As you can see, I can connect there, but I'll show you how to go ahead and go through this whole process. And that way we can actually know how to do it. So I'll go ahead and put these back for now, and we'll show you how to craft all the things you'll need. So starting with the flux pearl, this is an item you'll need, and you just need flux dust, which is made by crushing the crystals, and an ender pearl. And you use that with the receiver, so you put in pearl and some quartz fiber, which you can see in the previous episode how to craft that, and you get a wireless receiver, and using these two things you can make the wireless ME access point. So you just need a receiver, calculation processor, glass cable, and you'll get the wireless access point block. You'll need that to start. You also need to make a dense energy cell. Missed the recipe apparently. You'll need energy cells all around a calculation processor, and those are just glass, Certus quartz, and flux dust. So you'll need a dense energy cell, and you'll need a terminal and a wireless receiver, and that gives you the ME wireless terminal. Now when you first make this, it's not going to work. It's going to say device is not linked, and that's also why you need this block called the security terminal. Now this is a yellow block. It's pretty useful for a lot of other things, besides just the thing we're using it for today, but the other uses for it are a little complicated, so we're just going to go over it later. For now, all you need to know is you craft it with an ME chest, engineering processor, a 16K component, 2 cables, and some iron. And yeah, so you'll need to place that on your system. So here, as you can see, I've got a little system set up. So I've got an ME drive, 16K storage in it. I've got a terminal. I can access the items inside of my system here. And I can also, power it up, and I've got a charger, and I've got the wireless access point up here, and the security terminal. So the first step to linking your terminal is you're going to need to charge this thing up. And the way you do that is the charger. This thing is shown how to craft in the previous episode, so I can go ahead and set this in here, and it's actually going to power down the rest of the system because all the power is being sucked away into this. If I made more of these chambers, maybe I could use it at the same time, depending on how much power you're generating. And I'm sure there's a way to get all of that to go in automatically, but I couldn't tell you exactly. Anywho, so you've got a little bit of power in this now. Let's see how much. 1.72%. That's got to be enough. So as you can see, I can actually still not use this because it's not linked yet, and that's what the security terminal is for. So if I go ahead and click on this, you'll see, if you see my mouse, there's a slot at the top right of this security terminal, and you go ahead and grab your terminal and just drop it in that slot, and that's all you need to do. So it's linked to this system specifically. It's not going to use this system, it's not going to use this system, only the one it's linked to, only this security terminal. I can access my items, I can put them in, take them out, and this, as you can see, has a range of 16 meters. So as of now, I can only use it up to this gold block. So if I go onto this gold block, it's out of range, and that's not terribly far in my opinion. So that's where the wireless booster cards come in. You'll see inside of this point, there's a spot to put these cards, and you'll need a few of these. So let's say if I put 8 in there, you can see that the energy usage goes up, but the range goes up to 38.6. So now I can use this way farther away. I can go all the way above my island, and well, okay, I went a little far, but as you can see, I can use this much farther away than just, you know, the one spot, and I can use this anywhere in my base now. And the way you want to make these booster cards is just with ender dust, which is grindstone with ender pearl, iron ingots, certus quartz, and fluix, and that's going to get you wireless boosters. And that will be the thing you can use to use your ME system anywhere you want. And this uses power decently slowly, so you don't have to worry about it sucking too much of your power up. You'll just have to charge it every so often. So that should do it for me today, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you had any questions, anything you need, please feel free to throw it down in the comments for me. But in the next episode, we're most likely going to be going over more advanced uses of the ME system and some of the more advanced blocks in the mod, including spatial storage, fluid ME systems, and other things like that. So if you enjoyed, please subscribe, leave a like, and this is Aspect. I'll see you in the next video.